I sound right now. Is that good?
Hey, you guys, an amazing guest today. A guy who is coming to Springfield, Missouri, who will be talking to anybody that's there. But he's not just a guy, he's a guy who started the organization called the Oath Keepers. And he went to jail because he was trying to defend your freedom. That's what he was doing. And he got thrown in jail by this guy. What was his name? Biden, you know. And Trump commuted his sentence. And now he's here with us today. And I've got to tell you, not only is he here for us, but he went down to Kerrville in Texas and went on like a search and rescue mission. I mean, the guy's incredible. His name is Stewart Rhodes. Stewart, thank you for joining us.
How you doing, Mike? Doing fine. Thank you.
So, Stewart, tell me, what did you see when you went to Kerrville?
So I went down there and linked up with some search and rescue men that were working for a local fire marshal. Um, and we were also working with Colonel Pete Chambers, who's a Special Forces retired lieutenant colonel who's now running for governor in Texas. And him and his men have been down there. Before that, they were on the border fighting against sex trafficking and rescuing kids. But now they've turned their attention to the flood relief. And they asked me to help them bring in more volunteers. I've had, pretty extensive experience bringing in volunteers for Oath Keeper flood relief efforts and hurricane efforts. And so I joined in with the search and rescue, and what we saw was, the entire Guadalupe River Valley overflowed. And we're talking a 30-foot rise in the river. I believe it was at least 27 feet within the first 45 minutes, but a total of over 30 feet rise in the river. And we found, dead deer up in the trees. And what this makes very clear is that if the deer can't get out of there fast enough to escape, then there's no way children are going to get out of those children's camps and families who are camping along the river. So it was a pretty devastating flash flood. It's something that has happened before in the Guadalupe River Valley. 1987 was the last big one. Before that, 1978. Then they had a really catastrophic flood in the Hill Country back in 1921. So it's a periodic thing that happens there. It's just frustrating for me as a first responder to see that there's not been what I consider effective protocols put in place to prevent that kind of loss of life. And obviously, whatever protocols they had in place didn't work because those kids were not evacuated and they were not able to self-rescue. And so, what I think should happen, and I did a post on Facebook with video and photos. I'll give you a link to it. You're free to use it. But what I think should happen is A, kids shouldn't be sleeping down next to the river. There's no reason for that. They should be up on high ground at night when they're sleeping. If they can go down, they can, they're fit enough to walk down and do recreation by the river, but they should not be sleeping down there. Because this came in the middle of the night and everyone's asleep, and the loss of life is catastrophic. So that's the first thing is they should just have the kids sleep up top. And the second thing is there should be concrete steps, and I have photos of local ranchers and business owners who have concrete steps leading up from the river and then up to their house. And that way, in the middle of a storm, you can't go up those banks. It's just too slippery. We're having a difficult time just walking around on the river banks because it's muddy and slippery. There's no way a kid's going to be able to do that in the middle of a storm. So they need to have concrete steps with railings installed that so they can self-rescue up to higher ground. That to me is a no-brainer. And of course, sirens and making sure they have robust communications. There should be a Starlink. Give them a Starlink at each camp so that they don't have to worry about cell service. So those are the easy fixes that should be done. We'll see what happens. There's a special session in the legislature in Texas coming up to address the flood, and I'm going to go testify. But I really believe they need to have a way to self-rescue, and the no-brainer, clear way to do that is concrete steps going up with steel guardrails on each side that kids can grab a hold of and climb up in the middle of the storm. That's what they should do because you're not going to have time to evacuate them in vehicles when a flood hits. You're just not going to have time.
So, Stuart, I have to ask you this. It's like 2025. So we have like this internet and all that stuff, Starlink and all that crazy stuff that lets the world be connected, but something broke in Texas. Something broke down. And you and I both have talked about uh, cloud seeding. What do you think that played into this?
Well, I think it's very suspicious that Rainmaker, the cloud seeding or weather modification company, was doing weather modification in Texas, in that area, on July 2nd. They have a contract in Texas. I've seen it. And the owner of that company, or the CEO, was on Bannon's show the other day admitting that they were doing weather modification in the area on July 2nd, but then, of course, saying that had nothing to do with the resulting storm. It needs to be investigated. That's just too, I mean, July 2nd, they do their weather modification, whether they call it cloud seeding or whatever they were doing. And then 2 days later, the catastrophic flood. It should be investigated. And I've heard that the same is also true in Rio Doso, that that same company was also seeding there on July 2nd. And they had a massive flood in the next few days. So it should be investigated. At the very least, it should be looked into and then determine whether or not that played a role. I'm suspicious of it, frankly.
Well, pardon my language, you guys. I mean, what is this bullshit? I mean, seriously,
Right.
you know, I mean, a tragedy happened, yet we all want to like sit back and say, oh, it was a big flood. God did this and all that. I just call bullshit on that. You were there. You saw what happened, the devastation, the inability of people to understand what goes on. I mean, look, I was a big wave surfer. I was a huge ocean guy for my entire life. But I'll tell you, the biggest thing that'll kill you is debris. And
Yeah.
you
So
saw that.
yeah, sure. And being dashed against trees and rocks by the raging water. Yeah.
So
But
we
so flash
do.
floods happen and flash floods are dangerous. But in this case, there was weather modification going on 2 days before. So obviously it should be investigated. That's clear to me.
Well, look, I mean, we have systems in place today to warn people.
Well, they really don't actually. They
But
they don't
what
have
happened here, bro?
well,
That's my question. What happened that it just hiccuped and all of a sudden killed like a few hundred people?
well, they don't have systems in place. That's the problem, is that in a lot of these areas, they have not installed warning systems. They have tornado sirens that sound when there's a tornado threat. They have not yet done that in all of these areas when it comes to flood danger. That's the difference. And so that needs to be fixed. There should be sirens that go off when there's a flood warning. So that needs to be addressed. But like I said, they also need to have a way to either self-rescue or don't let kids sleep down next to the river. And there are whole families that were sleeping and camping down in campsites next to the river, mom and dad and kids that are gone. So, it needs to be addressed one way or the other so that this can't happen again, especially with children's camps. It's one thing for adults to make their own decision about whether they want to sleep next to a river and put their lives at risk. It's something entirely different to have children, especially young kids, 8 and 9 years old, sleeping down next to the river in a floodplain. I don't think it should be done, but if they're going to do that, there better be sirens. There better be very robust alert protocols and training for the camp staff to evacuate. But if there's here's the other thing: the Austin firefighters are publicly condemning their chief from the Austin Fire Department for not responding to a call. They say that on July 2nd, they were given like a warning order from the state of Texas to prepare for mutual aid to come from Austin down to the hill country. And they're saying that their chief would only sent three of their rescue swimmers and didn't respond fast enough. But I have to wonder, what was the warning order that went out on July 2nd from the state of Texas? I'd like to see that. And if there was a warning order about possible flooding coming from the state of Texas on July 2nd, how come they didn't go contact those camps and tell them, pull the kids out from being down near the water, bring them up to high ground somewhere to sleep? That's what should have been done. So I know a lot of people are like, oh, you can't Monday morning quarterback and all the finger pointing. This is not the time. It is the time to address this. It needs to be fixed. Obviously, whatever protocols, whatever systems they had in place, which I think were minimal, didn't work and failed to preserve the lives of all those children. That needs to be fixed. And I don't care what anybody says about, we should wait on this. And no, there's a special session being called for the legislature to address this. And so we need to address it now. So that's what needs to be done. And they should be either not sleeping down there or provided with a way to self-rescue and robust alarm systems to let them know it's time to get up and get out of there. And I really do believe that if the government is alerting first responders to be prepared to respond with fast water rescue, that there might be a flood coming, the camp should be evacuated at that time and the kids moved up to high ground. What is the big deal about just having them not sleep down there when there's a possible flood coming? I don't understand why you would insist on not telling the camp, not evacuating the kids to higher ground. Figure that out.
Look, Stewart, you were a high military operative.
Well, I wouldn't say that. I was long range reconnaissance, airborne long range reconnaissance.
Well, I would say it. I mean, you were a hero. I mean, you were like my dad, you
I wouldn't
know,
say that either. I'm just
who
doing
fought.
my job. Yeah.
But you go down there and you do this stuff, and no one supports you financially. You just go down and do the deal, which is why I love you so much. I mean, here's the deal, guys. You can meet Stewart Rhodes at the conference that we're having in Springfield, Missouri. Hear the Watchmen, MEN.com. But the important thing is what Stewart does is he gets off his butt and he does the deal. Stewart, what can you say to people to tell them, like, hey, we need help?
Right. So what I was asked to do for Doc Chambers and his organization, which is Remnant Ministries, was to put a call to action out on Facebook, and ask for trained volunteers, search and rescue, medical, rescue divers, recovery divers, and we had a great response. We had over 30 people respond. Search and rescue trained. We have a Navy recovery diver who responded. And he's right now he's doing dives looking for, sadly, looking for submerged vehicles and looking for the bodies of victims. And we're doing that to bring the families some closure. So we still need more qualified divers. We still need more qualified search and rescue. And especially if you have a dog handler with a cadaver dog, please alert them. And they go to my Facebook page, and that call to action's on our Facebook page. We ask them to fill out a application to be a volunteer. But really, if they're qualified, all they have to do is just fill out the form and get it into us, and we'll get them down there as fast as possible. So right now we're doing focuses on recovery of all the victims, and then after that it's going to be rebuilding, and there'll be a need for guys with heavy equipment, whether they own it themselves or there's operators to come down and help because guys get burned out. You get a guys working on a skid steer and working with excavators, and after a certain amount of time, they have to take a break. So we could use people that are skilled in the use of that equipment going forward. So, and right now they're helping with the search too, because they're lifting up very carefully, helping sort through the debris. And we're, the priority is making sure that we find all the bodies. We don't want is like the other day, I talked to a guy yesterday who was an equipment operator, and they were trying to clear some of the debris piles around Leander. Leander got hit pretty hard too. Um, and he said that the second bucket load, they found a leg sticking out of the bucket, so they had to stop and just sort through very carefully, layer after layer, going down through the debris pile. Because one thing you don't want is have someone's loved one, their remains being, inadvertently taken to a landfill somewhere, and then just never have any good closure or know that they were found. So they're being very careful, and they've stopped several times. Had to stop guys that are trying to help with construction equipment just to be sure that they're carefully looking through the debris for bodies. And that's where the cadaver dogs come in. A cadaver dog can differentiate between animal remains. We have plenty of dead animals that were caught in the flood, but that dog is trained to smell and look for human remains, not animal remains. They can differentiate between them. So that's why they're so incredibly valuable.
Stewart, you are doing such incredible work. I'll tell you what, you guys, there are two in this world that I would absolutely take a bullet for. One is Stewart Rhodes, the other one is Jamie Walden. These guys are the real deal. So what I want each of you to do is I want you to think for a moment, and I want you to think about what Stewart Rhodes did. He went to jail for you. He did. He stood up for the Constitution, and he stood up for America, and he went to jail. Oh, under like this weirdo whose name I won't repeat, but you all know who I'm talking about. But these guys are heroes who fought for your freedom, pure and simple. So I want you to take a moment and think about that while you're sitting on the couch, watching our YouTube, which I'm so grateful you are, but still, get up off the couch. You got to help this guy. I mean, Stewart, how do people donate to you?
I have my own personal Give Send Go. It's givesendgo.com/GAF5B. So that's phonetically, that's Golf Alpha Foxtrot 5 Bravo. And I'll get you a link to that. GAF5B is my Give Send Go. So yeah, that'd be great. I'm going to be rebuilding Oath Keepers and relaunching it. I saw from this response, and also what we saw in Rio Doce in Mexico, and several other states were hit with flooding. I think it's necessary for me to relaunch Oath Keepers so we can get back in there and do what we've always done. We did a lot of disaster relief, and it's an important mission. And but I do encourage veterans. I think it's one of the best things for a veteran. One of the volunteers I met down there is a 10th Mountain Division veteran, recently just discharged from the military, from the Army. And one of his buddies who became a ranger had just committed suicide. And it was devastating for him. And he told me that he was also starting to spiral downward. So, but it was good for him to be doing the disaster relief because gives him a mission again. And we lose too many veterans of suicide. But one of the great benefits of doing disaster relief is they feel that they have a mission again and a purpose to make them realize that their life is valuable and they can't just focus on their own internal demons and then check out. So that by helping other people, it helps them. So that's really a great side benefit of doing disaster relief. So I would encourage veterans out there to jump in. Absolutely.
So you guys got to understand something. So, like me, and some of you know my story, some of you don't. But when Stewart was imprisoned unjustly, well, I was imprisoned justly, but when that happened, there was a moment there where we came to Jesus, and Jesus said, I got you. So, Stewart, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. Um, what got me through, and I spent over a year in solitary confinement, really trying to break us and coerce us into false confessions and false testimony against President Trump. You know, and not only did I refuse, but so did my co-defendants. They're all honorable people that, we took the heat and we all spent time in solitary confinement. But what got me through was my faith and above all, the story of Joseph. And I understood that, what man means for evil, God will use for good, just as he did with Joseph. And that was my mindset through the whole thing. That and seeing myself as a POW. I think we were POWs against the domestic enemies of our Constitution. We're being held by them as they waged war on our own country. So that's what got me through, though, was my faith. And I think that's true. I think that the persecution of President Trump backfired on them. The persecution of all of us J6ers, the demonization and persecution against the whole MAGA movement had only backfired, only made us stronger and more resolute. So, once again, what man means for evil, God is used for good. That's how I see it. But that's what got me through. Every morning I began my day. I made sure I started off with a prayer of thanks and gratitude, thanking the Lord for my children and taking watch over them, thanking the Lord for my physical health and strength and making sure that I stayed positive. And then I did my best to help other people. So while I was in prison, I became a GED tutor and helping guys get their GED and also an adult reading instructor. A lot of the prisoners can't read. Our school system has failed so many people. So teach them how to read. And I was also a suicide watch companion where someone on suicide watch, you have to have eyes on them 24/7, which is why I know Epstein didn't kill himself. There's no friggin' way. I've been a suicide watch companion, and when you're doing that right, that there's no way the person has the opportunity to kill themselves. So I just don't buy that, by the way.
Well, amen, brother. I mean, listen, if you guys want to meet a true warrior for Christ, you want to come out and meet him in Springfield, Missouri, August 22nd through the 24th. Now, when you're there, Stewart, you have like a interesting thing that you're going to talk about, and that is about preparedness. Talk to us about that.
Right. Well, this latest flood just shows the necessity of having strong communities that are organized and ready to take care of each other. And the stronger you are, and more prepared you are in advance, including in your churches, the better you're going to be. It Of course, you always welcome volunteers from outside the area, but what I'm seeing across the country is that communities just are not what the founders intended. What they intended is that we have trained and organized militia made up of all the men in the community. It's supposed to be every able-bodied male. In fact, it still are by federal statute. Every able-bodied male age 17 to 45 is defined by federal statute as the militia. And for us veterans until age 64, we can be called up. But the problem is we're not organized. They define the organized militia as the National Guard, and then all the rest of us are defined in federal statute as the unorganized militia, which is really an oxymoron. We should be organized in our communities. Government's probably not going to do it. I think President Trump has the authority to call us up and organize us, and I think he should. And I'll be writing up when I get done with the disaster relief for the flood. I'm going to take about 2 weeks and write up a white paper that just lays out his legal authority to call us up. And that's what he should do. I'm going to advocate for that. But meanwhile, I think it's imperative that we get ourselves squared away in our communities. And I would call it a strong county project. Every county should be a strong county because we already have domestic enemies of the Constitution who are stirring up and trying to incite insurrection. We saw it in Los Angeles most recently with them attacking ICE agents. We saw it in the summer of 2020 all across the country with the Chaz and the CHOP and all these, declarations of independent sovereign territory. They were basically an open insurrection. And I think more of that's coming. And we also have Al Qaeda bragging that they have cells in the country that are going to do an October 7th style attack. And of course, I believe it's true that Iran has sent their proxies in. I'm sure Hezbollah and Hamas have infiltrated across our wide open borders over the last 4 years and brought in their cells for future action. So I think that's coming. So the Red-Green Alliance is very real. That's the alliance between the communists and the jihadists. Both of them have a desire to destroy this country, and both of them are working together very, very plainly. So that's why we need to get ourselves prepared, along with natural disaster that's going to happen, whether it's a tornado or a flood or fires or rock slides, things like that happen across the country. Bad weather here in Texas was an ice storm a few years back that was so bad that people died in their homes. They died from hypothermia. So the churches should be a place of refuge. Every church should have emergency power, emergency heat, and clean water. No matter what happens to the utilities, they should be able to function as a place of refuge. And that's one thing I advocate is the churches have got to get squared away. They should be a place of refuge.
You know what, Stuart? Okay, here's the deal, you guys. If you're watching this and you're one of my followers, this guy is one of the real deals. And I have dealt with a lot of phonies, but this guy's the real deal. He does what he does because he's driven by God. He goes out and helps people. Think of that. You guys got to get off your couch and you got to get out there and help people. My dad's last words to me, and then he died, which was not pleasant, but he said, always, always never give up and always help people. Well, Stewart Rhodes is that guy. So I want you all to look up Stewart, Google him, you can find him, and I want you to come out to hear the Watchmen in Springfield, Missouri, August 22nd through the 28th. And I want you to meet him in person so you can get a clue about what a real hero is.
Well, I would say this, and I appreciate your kind words, but like I said, I'm not a hero, but what I am is someone that takes my oath seriously. And I think everybody else that took that oath should take their oath seriously also. But even if you're not prior service, I encourage you to come to the conference. I'm going to be holding a class on how to organize your communities. I'll lay it out for you very, very plainly and give you some good strategies to go back to your neighborhood and start a good, strong neighborhood watch and also a town watch and a county watch and get yourself squared away. That's one of the things I want to do at the conference is do a little mini seminar on that and get guys organized. And if you want to join my new version of Oath Keepers I'm kicking off, come meet me at the conference and let's talk.
All right. Hey, Stuart, thank you so much for taking the time today to be with us. And look, you guys, yeah, I rarely say this, but I'm going to say it right now. You need to follow Stewart Rhodes on Facebook and you need to support him. He did the deal for you, so support him. All right, guys, we'll see you tomorrow on another edition of The Last Watch.
Thank you, brother. God bless. See
God
you
bless,
soon.
brother. Whoa there, big fellas. Pull those reins back for a second before you go away. Look at the Remnant Rising 2025 conference in Springfield, Missouri, August 22nd through the 24th. Is right around the corner. Look at the speakers. Look who's going to be there. Joe Horn, Kenny C., Jamie Walden, Derek Gilbert, Kevin Ship, Donna Howell, Nita Horn, Nathan Reynolds, Mondo de la Vega, oh, and Randy Conway, Sharon Gilbert, Dave Hodges, John Moore, Tracy Tennant, Vicky Joy Anderson, and Stewart Rhodes. You guys can't be missing out on this. I don't know what we got to do to ignite the fire underneath you, but you need to do it. You need to come out because listen, it's like in Gideon said, the 300, they were able to witness God work. He didn't say see him. He said witness. So come on out, join us. August 22nd through the 24th, Springfield, Missouri. Just go to hearthewatchmen.com. Check everything out, make your reservations, and use the promo code YouTube20, and you will save $20 off your purchase. So get busy, get out there, make a difference, be a part of the body, rise up, and step in to a whole new level of faith for our Lord Jesus Christ. You guys, thank you so much, and we're going to see you there.